Thank you. And you're happy for me to kick off?
Yes, over to you.
Great. All right. Well, welcome to anyone on this webinar who is of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, and acknowledging all the traditional owners of our land and water. The land that I'm on, Wurundjeri, the Kulin Nation, and paying full respects to elders past, present and emerging. So thank you again for joining us and recognising everyone and all the land and water that you are part of. And it is module 5 for Safe System Assessment. So thank you for coming back. And it's the last one, which is exciting, I'm sure. I've had a look through, and so far for the last assessment, the site assessment, we have 4 people that have submitted their assessment. So thank you, well done. You will be graded soon. And of course, everyone else still have time to complete that. So welcome again, module 5, last one, and you'll hear more from me later in the session about the LMS again. But over to you, Ken.
Thanks, Loretta. And that's right, we're at the pointy end of the course. People are well stuck into their safe system assessments. Some already got them in, which is great to see. And yep, I'm a bit of all right, get the work done so I can relax. And but some people like to leave it a little bit later. You do have another week there officially, but you'll remember I said for this module I had plenty of time allocated to answer your practical questions about assessment techniques and the assessment you're doing, or general assessment, safe system assessments. Or really, like, if you did have other road safety type questions, I'm happy to give you my thoughts or point you at different research or projects that have been done, or direct you to people around Australia or around the world. Just pure product of me being in road safety engineering for so long is that I've come across a lot of different situations out there and done lots of research and work with lots of people. So no doubt I'd be able to point you at something, but maybe there's things that we all agree nobody's got anything good on, and we might suggest it to Austroads for some research, or your state road authority. So please, there's a lot of time in this session dedicated to whatever you want. If we don't use that, it's time that goes back to you, which I strongly encourage you use to finish off anything outstanding in this course, be that your safe system assessment or any last quizzes, or that module 2 assignment, which almost everybody's done. And I think we've got feedback to everybody on that. Okay, so, and then do that, at any point. You feel free to put your hand up using the raise hand button. We can give you the ability to unmute yourself and you can ask your question. We can't get your camera to work at all. You won't be able to do that, but we can make it so you can unmute yourself. So if you want to ask the question in that way, please just, at any point, raise your hand. Or of course, put it in the chat or the Q&A, and Loretta's behind the scenes monitoring that, and I'll be jumping in and out of that. I've got a few things to ask you during this session, but it's just a bit of me talking about more safe system assessments, how they work in terms of policy, what different jurisdictions are doing, when they're best done, what are the sort of accreditations. So, shortly you're going to submit that assignment, get a pass mark, get a certificate. Well, what does that mean? What is there an accreditation scheme? And I'll talk you through a bit of that.
We do have one question that's coming fast from Imran, if you have a chance, Ken. The question is whether the signalised Wombat crossing can reduce the exposure risk.
Oh, okay. So I'll go with, so you got sort of two things in there a little bit in the mix. So a Wombat crossing is the raised pedestrian crossing, or a raised zebra crossing is the Wombat. So if we signal, like, it's a bit you wouldn't signalize that as such because it's already got pedestrian priority. You would you could do a raised POS, raised pedestrian operated signals, which I think is what you're referring to. So you've got this pedestrian crossing point with traffic signals and it's raised, okay? That's got nothing to do with exposure, okay? That's the only way it changes exposure is if it attracts more people to cross there, or if it somehow detracts from the people crossing, like lessens the number of people crossing. I want you in safe system assessments to replace almost the word exposure in your mind with number of people crossing or number of people walking along the road, or AADT. So really bring it back to numbers. So the form of control in its own right is irrelevant to exposure unless it's actively changing the number of road users exposed to a crash. So hopefully that clarifies that. But a raised signalized crossing will reduce the likelihood of crash from predominantly from the signalization, and the severity of crash from the fact that people slow down on the approach because they've got to navigate over a raised treatment. So if they crash, the severity will be less because the speed will be down. Great question. Thank you. Those are exactly the kind of things we want to clarify in this session. Make sure we've got that crystal clear in our mind: exposure and likelihood and severity.
I might just add there, we do a raised crossing training as well for those of you that haven't heard. And we do have the next one starting in October on the 10th, I believe. So get in contact with me, happy to register you, or on our website, you can register. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, and I do a module on the detailed design of raised crossings, which is fun because you've got to think about sight distance to the crossing. You've got to think about ramp grades. You've got to think about drainage, lighting, the signage configuration, line marking, pavement setup. So there's quite a bit to that. I have a very packed module in that, and we've got some other wonderful experts talking about strategic importance and economic analysis of raised crossings, talking about accessibility for all road users, and then positioning of raised crossings and selecting within an area where the appropriate spots are for raised crossings. So it's a good course. Oh, I was just about to start onto it and I saw something pop up there, and it looks like it's from Alan. Will a raised intersection with zebra crossings near a school in an urban environment improve safety over a roundabout? Yeah, I was going to say just flat out yes, but I paused because I think you'd get a very similar outcome from a roundabout with raised crossings around it. So wombat crossings around an urban roundabout, I think you would get a similar outcome there. But obviously you're going to get it's going to be easier probably to put a raised intersection in with zebra crossings, which are essentially kind of wombat crossings in their own right. It's going to be a narrower footprint for you to be able to do that. So I think you're more likely to do that. Now, there's a couple of really good examples of that. Where is it? It's in sort of the Footscray area. I forget exactly what that suburb is, just next to Foot. It's in Maribyrnong. I can send you some pictures of it if you're interested, Alan, but I'm sure you've got some good designs in mind. Complication, bus route and narrow street. Yeah, so you're very much in the raised intersection with zebra crossing territory there. But I think that's probably a good example of where a safe system assessment would add value. You'd be able to put those two down and get scores on the outcome of those and see if they're generally similar or one stands out from from the other. It would just be a systematic way to think through those different advantages or risks. And that, like for me, that's the kind of thing that you can just sort of do yourself in a fairly quick way to help your decision making. You might want to go to a more formalized safe system assessment, where you engage independent parties to go in and do this assessment. But like the methodology is fairly sound as just a bit of sanity thinking for you on a page, and spend 20 minutes just sort of working through that and getting that outcome as a bit of a helping with your development process. So it doesn't always need to be that full-blown exercise of engaging somebody and getting that to add value to a project. Okay, thanks for the question, Alan. Good. So let's hit the record button if we haven't already, then please, Loretta.
Yeah, all recording. Sorry, I did it a bit early.
Oh yeah, I'd forgotten. Of course you did. You did it very early, which was good. Thank you. Wally's back, of course. So let's not forget to count our Wallies. Okay, this session, as I mentioned, it's more about the policy style side of things and process and the like. You've got your head around how to do a safe system assessment, and you've got your head around sort of safe system principles and how that plays out in the assessment. So it's now about within local government or state government or any of our projects, or looking at the road network, when do we do them and who can do them, and what are the advantages of them? So yeah, what are the benefits of safe system assessments? So the process within an infrastructure project. And I will talk a little bit about the difference between a road safety audit and a safe system assessment. This is a ever-changing sort of beast, and they're coming together a fair bit, and they're getting closer to each other. But we'll go from there. So just a bit of like Australia, New Zealand context in terms of safe system assessments, predominantly at a state level. So we see there that Victoria has a safe system assessment guidelines. Within that, they put forward their policy statement, which says some mandating of safe system assessments for project over certain dollar amounts. I'll take you through that in a little more detail lately. South Australia has replicated the Victorian one. We're seeing Queensland has come out with the road safety policy, which says safe system assessments will be done on all infrastructure projects. So pretty strong commitment there from Queensland. New South Wales has recently put out their 2026 road safety action plan. And within that are requirements for safe system assessments at feasibility, functional design and detailed design stages. There's quite a bit of new focus. That's probably the newest one there. New Zealand has been doing safe system assessments for quite a while and has now combined road safety audits and safe system assessments into one methodology to try to, I suppose, streamline things a little bit and minimize confusion to industry in terms of these two different assessment methodologies, which have overlapping elements. And they'd call that a safe system audit. Potentially Austroads may come and follow suit on that in later years. Austroads is a very slow entity to get change like that to happen because you're trying to get agreement from all of these jurisdictions on some change, and often it's very hard to align all those things up. Northern Territory sort of dabbles in safe system assessments. You see it pop up in contract specifications sometimes, and a requirement, as does Tasmania, and ACT a bit the same. So they're smaller jurisdictions and smaller road authority, state or territory road authorities. So they're but they are getting interested in it. And Western Australia, we could sort of move them across the page probably. They can go out there a little bit because they're just doing things completely differently, which like it's not a judgment, it's just very different approach to how they are trying to implement the SAFE system. And they see it done through their road safety management system and very different ways of going about things. But that's all right. I mean, it's all about, getting the end outcome of really reducing death and serious injury and having good ways to look at investments on the road network and understand how well we're doing. If they've got another methodology that they are able to do that with, or they feel they're able to do that with. Okay. So I'm going to talk to this slide for a little bit of time. It tells me quite a story. It may not tell you as much of a story yet, but I will talk you through the story it tells me. What it is one of the key outputs of an evaluation of the effectiveness of SAFE system assessments. And the way it was done was using a crash prediction model. So what a crash prediction model is as the name says, it's looking at a road or a new investment and using a very data-driven approach, trying to model and project how many deaths and serious injuries you would expect from a road. So plugging into it some obvious things like your projected traffic volume increases, pedestrian increases, cyclist increases, and these sort of things, but also plugging in there's generally used around 70 infrastructure variables in these models to spit out some data around expectation on crashes. Some models take into account past crashes, some don't. They just use it on a from around the world. We know this configuration would generally produce this number of deaths and serious injuries. So they used a crash prediction model to do this. And what they did was take 35 SAFE system assessments of major projects done by a variety of consultants, and 35 projects on these really big projects. And they used the prediction model over a 20-year forecast to look at how many fatal and serious injury crashes would we expect. So the first scenario they laid out was the do nothing, that they've been given a project, but they say, well, the existing conditions, if that project never happens, what do we expect? And on that, they said in these road environments, these areas, big town bypasses. So if you don't bypass the town, or major duplications of roads, freeway upgrades, if these don't happen, there will be 7,908 serious injuries and 344 in those areas, in those particular areas over the next 20 years. So then you move to the design that was handed over for the SAFE system assessment. So the bulk of these were done at sort of feasibility stage. So there was a bit of design detail, but it wasn't into detailed design, but there was enough to get a good grip for what's going on. So that brought the number of serious injuries down to 6,700 and fatalities down to 286. So you can see there's some benefit. So then the SAFE system assessment was done, and it looked at exactly as you're doing in yours, looked at the existing conditions, looked at this design, made some commentary around that, but then made recommendations and said, well, here's what you could do. And the evaluators here took the recommendations, and they took the primary treatments and as many of the supporting as they could. And they said under these scenarios, if they implemented primary treatments, I think they made well, no, they did make some decisions about not having overlapping treatments. So, because often you'll put in a few treatments, and if they couldn't do them all, because it would be, but they're taking different ones. It dropped it down to 3,890 serious injuries and 167 fatalities across this area. So then you can see the final one was to understand, well, what did the project teams actually adopt? So they got that safe system assessment with all of those lists of things to be done, or recommendations, ideas, and they said, yep, we'll do that one, we'll do that one. We can't do those two. Okay, we'll do that one. Yeah, we can't do those three either because of different constraints. And that went back up then to 5,298 serious injuries, 227 fatalities in these areas. So what this tells me, it tells me quite a few things. One is that the designs we get just off usual design houses, people who are sort of basically following guidelines, standards, and generally just, putting in what's kind of been done, it improves road safety, but it leaves us with quite a residual amount of death and serious injury. But it does improve road safety, our usual design. The amount, though, we can get is pretty big. I mean, that's the full amount we can get. We're only getting a portion of it with the designs that are being produced. That's what we could get. Now, what we actually get in reality is not quite there, but this difference, that difference there, that is the advantage we get from simply going through the process of a safe system assessment. Because each of those project teams has been able to incorporate these changes, regardless of whether it was a little bit more cost or it, maybe had some challenges with community or these sorts of things, but they were able to adopt these. So that's just an immediate win. Like that in its own right is why you can justify doing safe system assessments and spending the small amount of money to get a safe system assessment done. But then, so that's the proof of their benefit. The fascination in this I have is like, why this? Why are we able to suggest things and then not have them actually play out? And that is a combination of things. I think that's one is some cost stuff. Sometimes things are recommended that just you can't afford them. They can't afford them. They haven't budgeted for them. They're constrained in one way or another. Sometimes it's things like, environmental, cultural heritage, other issues that are sort of unavoidable in projects. Sometimes it is a little bit of reluctance or, fear of the unknown. It's a treatment that they don't usually use like that. They're worried about bits and pieces. So there's a bit there for us to work through. And I think, more people being exposed to some of these treatments and seeing them, and more we get out there, the better we'll do. So that's an interesting one. I think we'll see over time the original design come down. Because one major advantage we have of safe system assessments, as we had for many years with road safety audits, is that they're actually a wonderful educational tool for designers, because the process of somebody looking at something from a safety lens or a safe system lens and then providing that feedback, the designer and the project manager and the project engineer, they look at it and then they incorporate and they understand, okay, well, I see why they're doing that, why they're suggesting that. And then the next project they do, they go, oh, okay, well, we'll incorporate that in from the start. And so we'll see that come down, which is great. What is going on there, though? We have talked about like aspiring to zero death and serious injury on the road network, and the SAFE system is our way to sort of get there. We've just done an assessment and made recommendations to, make this project amazingly SAFE system aligned. And we still have a residual of 167 deaths and 3,890 serious injuries in just these road environments. So that is worrying, but that is a combination of things. It's a combination of the fact that we just don't know how to address some of these crashes that are popping out in the prediction model. It's probably a good indication the prediction models are fairly somewhat accurate or realistic, because when you analyze, well, what's spitting out of this prediction model? They talk about motorcyclists crashing on these higher speed roads, and even with sort of motorcycle underrun protection on the barriers and these sort of things, it's just beyond survivable forces. We just don't know how to deal with that at the moment. Yes, we're lessening a bit of the likelihood of it, but we're really stuck there. They've got things like pedestrians being struck on high-speed roads and things like that from nighttime and these sort of things, where it's a very rare event that a pedestrian's out there, but it does happen. And, your land use is a bit weird for it to be happening. It's not expected, but these things are happening. So they're challenging ones. There's a lot of the high-end recidivist offender style crashes. So people intentionally driving very fast through areas, driving the wrong way down motorways, driving on illicit drugs at high speed, police chases, all of that stuff. I said in module 1 that, it represents a fair chunk of road trauma, but it's not the dominant one. Well, if we're able to implement a lot of this infrastructure, it starts to become a more dominant part of this residual that we're dealing with. So, the safe system assessment and infrastructure is not going to get us there in its own right, but it can do a fair amount, can't it? From sort of the existing conditions all the way down to there, we can really do a wonderful job with. That's just known stuff we can do, stuff that's, been done before. And then we've got a portion of this one down here. We need to innovate and come up with new ways to address it. And a portion of it's probably going to need some, major societal reforms and altered way of thinking. So I told you there's a bit of a story behind this little chart and this output, but I think that's important for you to understand when you're talking to people about why you think a safe system assessment should be done, or explaining the benefits of safe system assessment and the like. But I'd be interested if people do have comments or questions around that. I'll happily answer them, or even insights you've got around that. So Joseph's popped a question in there. New vehicle technology was also assisting reducing that. Yeah, so the prediction model does take into account vehicle technology and the improvements in vehicle technology over the next 20 years. So the way they sort of do that, it's pretty fascinating methodology for crash prediction. Is for all of the crashes they're expecting, they also can, well, I might as well, I'll spend a couple of minutes explaining how to do that. So what you do is you can look at a road, existing road, and it's got a number of crashes on that road at the moment. In the past 5 years, there's been a number of crashes. And what they do is they take these crashes, and they actually do this for the whole state or the whole region, not just the length of road. But they take the crash and they say, what was the age of the vehicle in that crash? And they say, well, the vehicle was a 2013 Toyota Camry, and they go, okay. So then in 20 years' time, it'll be a 2033 Toyota Camry. And what do we expect that vehicle will have in terms of features? And so they're able to do that. Now, it gets a bit more complicated because your crashes over 20 years sort of occur over the 20 years. Not all the crashes happen in 20 years. So you have to split it up that way. But it's about acknowledging that the cars involved in crashes today are not all brand new cars. And in fact, a lot of them are old cars, and we expect sort of that to continue on into the future. So we're that's how they kind of factor that in. So then a lot of crashes in this scenario, they go, well, they'll solve themselves with the vehicles. But anyway, I won't get into that in a lot more detail, just to say, yeah, there was some factoring of that into this.
We do have a question. Ken, I'm not sure if you're ready for this. Am I right to read it?
Yeah, I see it's a big one.
Yeah. Big one from Michael, maybe specific to the assignment. So here goes. So will it be possible that in our assessment that the outcome of the SSA between the existing intersection layout and the intersection upgrade option will be almost the same score or not significantly lower? Our specific subject intersection side roads do have movement restrictions, i.e. one is low, the other one is low only, and the design option is signalise the intersection, which also includes removal of existing median brake with 2-aspect signal for the Queensland ambulance services, specific for emergency vehicle use through a U-turn median brake is provided further away from the intersection, which I assume is to compensate for the removal of the current median brake for QAS.
Right. Okay, thanks, Michael. So the quick answer is yes, that could be possible. It could be possible within your assessment that you say the existing conditions, has a score of 150 and the design has a score of 152. I mean, it's pretty much exactly the same. You're not really doing anything. You're changing things. There may be other like transport objectives that are being addressed by it, but from a safe system alignment perspective, you've pretty much done nothing. That would be possible. You might have one that you actually say goes up. You go to 150. If you build what you're saying here, we believe it goes up to 220, or it could come down, which is getting better aligned with safe system principles. So they're certainly all on the table. As for the specifics of that one in particular, from your description, I'm not 100% sure I'm able to make any informed comments. I would have to dig in and have a look myself, and don't know that one immediately. But if you're interested, I can certainly, myself or one of our experienced safe system assessors, can have a catch up and a chat with you about it. But I think it sounds reasonable that it would be around the same. And is there a link to the report we were talking about, the evaluation? Yeah, so it was done by a guy called Blair Turner, part of ARB Group at the time, and it is a public report. We'll see if we can dig something out and put it into the resource calendar. Maybe, Loretta, if you make a note of that, I'll try and dig it out. And I'll also pop in there maybe some information around the methodology of modeling crash, because there's not a huge amount in the evaluation, but there's more. There's some other interesting reports on that if it's something you're interested in. Thanks for the questions, everybody. That's really good. This is what we want this session to be. I will give you a coffee break or a tea break, as the world's most popular drink, in a minute or two, but I just want to cover it off a little bit here. I say a minute or two, more like 15 minutes. Okay, a few sort of dot point benefits of safe system assessments. Great way to determine how a project aligns with safe system principles, which is something that we've craved as an industry for a long time, because it has been that, everybody talking about safe system, and then actually on the ground, people, just using opinion. Oh, well, that's safe system and that's not. And there wasn't any rigorous methodology to do it. So at least this moves us along that track. Good way to compare design options and get those scores. And you can feed that into multi-criteria assessments, and it's helpful from that sense. It helps sort of inject ideas that you can put into these projects to move them closer or better alignment with safe system principles. Good for planners, designers, project managers to take the safe system theory to practice, and it's sound practice, sound basis for future planning and design of road infrastructure. And I suppose it's also validation of those commitments that many jurisdictions, state road authorities, local governments have made, which says, here's our road safety strategy that says we are going to operate under the safe system. And it's great and easy to put into a strategy, but how are you actually proving that you're doing this? And I think it's a good way to do that, or it is a way to do that, which is a good thing. Okay, so safe system assessments are best done at the early stages of a project, because there is willingness to change, to adopt ideas. There's often multiple options on the table, and that's a great time to do it. Once you're into detailed design, or you're looking at a detailed design, people are very reluctant to make any meaningful changes to that project. They're happy to tweak around the edges with it, warning sign here, or slight flare of a barrier here, or these sort of things. But fundamental changes like raising an intersection, or changing the form of intersection, or altering the cross section, they're just not going to happen once you're in detailed design. So that's why we want to get in early with the safe system assessment. Now, road safety audits early stages can make some of these suggestions on more fundamental changes, but they just tend to align better and work better in the detailed design, where they're really looking into those little nitty-gritty details. And differences between a road safety audit and a safe system assessment. There's a little table here which sort of outlines some of that. I think the 2022 version of the Ostred's Guide to Road Safety Part 6, which is road safety audit. Oh no, what have I done? Is a pretty good document in the sense that it's started to push us more into some of that safe system aligned thinking. So likelihood of crashes is addressed really well in both audits and safe system assessments. Severity, I just think, is better done in safe system assessments. You're so much more overtly forced to really analyze the severity of crashes. In theory, an audit should do it because you risk assess with likelihood and severity. But I do say sometimes, because I still continue to see a lot of road safety audits out there where, the classic is your big signalized intersection. The audit comes through talking about sight lines to the signals, phasing, lighting, line marking, pedestrian desire lines, like really great stuff, right? But completely ignores the severity when somebody runs the red light. The audit is 100% focused on that, stopping people running the red lights. And that's great. Like, we want all of that, right? But we just need to put ourselves in that position to say, even if we get all that right, you're running a set of signals at 80 kilometers an hour, people are going to crash. Doesn't matter, you've got mast arms and LEDs and great sight lines and advanced warning and all of that. They're still going to run this. And so the audit just is not doing that. And that plays out a little bit. So we've got that. We're trying to move the auditing industry along, but safe system assessments are helping there. And exposure is just in a road safety audit, exposure is simply packed into likelihood, and that's fine. But when you explicitly have it as a safe system assessment does, it sometimes opens the eyes to exposure altering recommendations, which may not have been as obvious to the auditor. Yeah, they're both thinking about all road users, and that's good. Pedestrian, cyclists, motorcyclists, and vehicles and heavy vehicles and everything like that. The safe system assessment in theory is really focused on that fatal and serious injury only, where an audit is we'll look at other minor things going on. And like looking into safe vehicles, people, maintenance, post-crash care is just more aligned for safe system assessments due to those qualitative questions at the end and the freedom to sort of make general commentary and ideas and things outside of the norm, or outside of just the pouring of concrete and infrastructure and barriers and that sort of stuff. Redesign project. Well, yeah, road safety audits, as many of you have done the audit course, or some of you have, I mean, we're very clear to say it's not your role to redesign the project. Highlight some issues and let them work it out. Maybe you might give them some ideas. Safe system assessments just are a bit better in pushing for some actual fundamental design changes. And innovation, this is the big one in my mind. Well, one of the big ones. They're all important, but I would say that road safety audits in general hamper innovation because people are just simply finding a lot of risks. That's the job of the auditor, find the risks if they do it. Whether the project is beneficial or not overall is not the role of the auditor. They're just there to find issues with it. And so you sometimes find people, going for innovation and then they go out to get an audit report done, and all it does is come back with lists of risks, and the project team or the manager there gets cold feet because of all these risks that have been presented. But the safe system assessment lays out their scoring and can say, well, the scores well over halved. So you're getting so much better alignment with safe system principles. And now here's a few things that could be improved. So it's just wonderful to help people actually do sort of new things, innovation. Okay, so the process of safe system assessing in general practice is very similar to the process for a road safety audit. I haven't talked to you about full and rapid safe system assessments yet. That's sort of the next few slides, but they are fairly close to each other anyway. One's just a bit quicker to do, a rapid being part of the name. Not a huge amount different. There's just a few little corners that are cut on a rapid. So somebody's deciding A, to do a safe system assessment, and B, whether it's a full or a rapid. And then there's the selection of a safe system assessment team and some sort of commencement meeting, and within that sort of exchanging of information, understanding the scope of project, getting everybody clear and on the same page, what's happening, what's being proposed, what's the land use, what's the area, how do we, what are you committing to here? Then the audit team, the assessment team gets out and looks at the site, fills out the existing conditions matrix, and then all of the matrices that come from there, depending on how many design options they're given. Considers those wider elements of the safe system. So they're those qualitative questions that I talked to you about yesterday, the end of last session, about general considerations. some ideas on treatments or changes or redesign alterations that would improve alignment with safe system principles. It's all reported up in a fairly standard manner, and you've been working with a standard reporting format, which is going to help you. You just follow that and use that again. And then it's handed over to the designer or the project manager, and they sort of look through and decide what they can and they can't do and what changes they're going to make. And then the design is amended, and those are incorporated into the project. Now, what will often happen, or sometimes happens, is between these stages here, they'll ask you to rescore. So they've said, well, okay, thanks for all your ideas. We're going to do these 6 out of 10 that you've come up with. Can you tell us what that will influence in terms of those scores and the matrix? So then you would rescore that as though it's a new option, and you'd be able to provide that change. I kind of like that for a number of reasons. But one particular one is that you can end with this really nice graph, which says, total original do nothing scenario, existing conditions, had a score there. And then, the design we put forward to get safe system assessed was there. And then we took on these recommendations and it brought it down to there. And that is that is great proof to anybody that you've been pushing hard to get the best you possibly can in alignment with safe system principles. It's a good little story. So, Loretta, I saw that.
Sorry, I was just a little comment there from Joseph, just to confirm the SS assessor should be independent for the project, like in RSAs.
Yeah, so this one, there's never been as strong a demand for independence for safe system assessing as there has been for road safety audits, where it's just everybody on the team must be independent, like for a road safety audit. That's just, you have to do that, right? For a safe system assessment, what the jurisdictions are talking about in their different, Australia doesn't mention anything about this. What the jurisdictions are saying is that really the safe system assessment lead, or somebody who's the lead person of that, should be independent if it's going to be a formal safe system assessment. But that team may incorporate people with a bit of an interest in the project for one reason or another, right? So that's generally what they talk about. It hasn't anywhere near been as rigidly defined as road safety auditing has. What was I going to say extra on that? Yeah, so that, though, I mentioned earlier for Alan's comment there around, which would be better, that there is like informal safe system assessing, like where you're utilizing the matrix to get a general idea and how does it sort of play out, which you can do on your own project and the designer can do on their own design and these sort of things. It's not like a road safety audit is a very specific, must follow these 10 steps, must be independent, it's a formal exercise and these sort of things. Safe system assessment has the ability to do that formalized outcome, but also it's just a risk assessment methodology that's quite useful to people. So a bit more flexibility. So who is putting up registers? Which jurisdictions are doing registers? So many of you will know there's registers of road safety auditors around the country. And, you call yourself an accredited road safety auditor in Victoria or in Queensland and the like. So Victoria has a list of recommended safe system assessors, which you'll be eligible to get onto. It's on the Safe System Engineering page of the VicRoads website. So it's DTP now, but they still use a VicRoads website. sure they'll move that over at some point. But here you see Register of Recommended Safe System Assessors. This is how sort of to get onto that list, which says you got to do this course. And pass it. So that's good. But then you have to actually submit a proper safe system assessment in. So you can do a safe system assessment as this one that you're going to use to submit. And then it's got to be submitted in, it's marked. And if they think you've proven your, your safe system knowledge and the ability to do a safe system assessment, then they'll put you onto the list, which is just a PDF list that they periodically update, and it's just got name, organization, email, and phone number and the like. So you can do that if you like. If you want something easier to do, the South Australian list of pre-qualified safe system assessors is, again, just a list, as you can sort of see there, and it continues on. But all they require is successful completion of this course. So when you've got the certificate, you can email it through to them and they will add you to the list. So that's South Australia. Now, no other jurisdiction has yet done any register of safe system assessors. They're looking at it sometimes, but most of them just say, well, if you've done a safe system assessment course and successfully completed it, will, sort of accept that as proof of competency. And I was mentioning there the Victorian government, it still sits as VicRoads corporate guidelines, this, but DTP guidelines, less than $2 million. They're saying you really should do some sort of, this is total estimated cost of a project, capital works cost. It should have some sort of check for best safe system alignment. It could be a rapid safe system assessment, but it might be some other ways that it's done. 2 million to 5 million has to have a full safe system assessment for anything complex or anything, high speed or significant risk of fatal serious injuries or innovation. And a rapid safe system assessment maybe for low risk projects or repeat assessments. But above 5 million, it just has to be a full safe system assessment. The only reason you can do a rapid safe system assessment would be if a full assessment's already been done and you're doing one of those repeat assessments. So the difference there between a full and a rapid, and I said they're not that much different, and they're really not. Like you might save yourself, I don't know, maybe a rapid's about 75% of the work of a full. But yeah, you're going to have some chat with the client, commencement. You're going to have to get intel on both of them and understand the project and all of that. Like they can't do these assessments without that. They talk about a workshop that's really sitting around and actually talking through the plan and putting it out as a role plot, getting intel and ideas and thoughts and understanding risks with the project team. Which is even put as optional in full safe system assessments, but it doesn't really occur in rapid. Site inspection. So that's one where they say, well, in theory, you can do rapids without going to site. You look at the plan, you look at, street view to get a general idea and maybe some photos and things. Most of the time for rapids, people still go to site anyway, just because you get a good feel for it. You do the matrix in both of them. You can, you don't do those qualitative questions in a rapid. They've gone. So you're just doing the matrix and recommending changes. The reporting's a little bit less in a rapid safe system assessment than a full, and then everything else is really the same. You've got to make recommendations. They decide what they're going to do and make changes as needed. I think that's probably a good time that we might take our 5-minute coffee break, stretch break. And I've got a little bit of sort of safe system road environments to take you through and answer any final questions. And then Loretta's going to show you how to finish off the course and get your certificate. And yeah. Okay, let's take 5 minutes.
See you soon.
Okay. Well,
Welcome back. And we've got a few questions for you in the chat.
Yeah. So I've seen Jess's, which is around shared zones versus dedicated crossing points with particular interest in accessibility and the like. Do I have experience with this? I've heard I haven't directly had that in any of the shared zone projects I've worked on, but I've certainly heard this issue come up a number of times. There are, I suppose, ways to, delineate a shared zone, but you start to diminish it. Like, that's from an accessibility perspective, but you start to diminish its, look and feel of a shared zone when you run lines of tactiles and those sort of things. So that that's a challenge. The pure easy sort of perspective on it is to talk about the fact that it's much lower speed, and the drivers will be more alert for the whole lot of it, and designed well. But I completely do understand where where this problem arises with people thinking about that. Well, they don't know where to cross. They don't know if they can cross, and they're unsure of that. So I don't have great answers on that. I'd welcome feedback from anybody in the group on that question. Jess, I could probably put you in contact with a really good access person that I know who might have some good opinions on that. Fundamentally, I say, if you've got the speeds down very low, you're going to win all round anyway. But I'll write a note on that, and I'll shoot you an email. Okay, what was our next one? Good comprehensive guidance on things to look for when defining other crash types. Yeah, okay. There isn't really anything particular noted about that. That might be one to add to a fact sheet. But really, sideswipe crashes, railway level crossing crashes, crashes with animals, they're the ones that most people gravitate to. Driveway, exiting from driveway or access points that you don't define as an intersection. There's another one. Yeah, they're the big common items. But no, I can't point you at a document to say, yep, they're all listed here. Do keep your questions coming in, get that final bit of clarification, other ideas. Sorry, just writing another note to myself there, make sure I follow up. Okay, so the last thing I want to do before I hand back to Loretta to show you how to finish the course is very briefly walk you through some road environments and just talk about, well, what would align highly with safe system principles in these different types of road environments. Just general, we're not going to get into detail. Why am I doing this? Well, because you're doing a safe system assessment on a particular road environment to prove you understand the process of safe system assessment. You can look through that lens. When you get a safe system assessment certificate or you get on the, it's not specific to a road environment. You could do a safe system assessment anywhere on the road network. And thus I just want to make sure you've got a few ideas in your mind of what we're sort of pushing towards in these road environments. So your recommendations might be quite well aligned. Now we practice this a bit with our movement and place categorization and thinking of ideas on that. So we were pretty well moved along, and so we can do this fairly quickly and give you some time back to finish off your safe system assessments and your quizzes and the like. But maybe I'll get some ideas out of you on these residential streets. So it's 50 kilometers an hour, default speed limit, access is out onto a arterial road. maybe jot in the chat some things you could do to improve alignment with safe system principles here. And of course, just for fun, let's categorize those into exposure, likelihood, and severity. Pop in any thoughts while I read this question that's just popped in. So where do we account for post-crash care? So yeah, generally it's all covered in the additional commentary questions. The might factor a little bit into your severity, but you're generally thinking about severity of the bulk, of the, I suppose, initial incident and the initial energy transfer. Generally, if you follow those questions, there's 5 questions on post-crash care, which is your way to inject that in, and then the recommendations might come out around that. Lower speed environment, 30 kilometre per hour, addressing the likelihood and severity. Beautifully done, Jess. And local area traffic management is going to be very good for that. And that will, in the same way, just put it there, lower speeds, which lowers likelihood and severity of crashes. Other things to think about are, restricting access. And we know that there is a lot of rat running done in these sorts of environments, and there's no need for it. That gives it a feel of that, movement corridor, which is certainly not. So restricting access, lessening exposure in that sense could be a good one. So, Alan's made a good point there around, well, you'd want to know a bit more about that environment and understand how many people are using it and the like, but at some point you might want particular crossing points in different locations, which can be really useful and helpful. And of course, raising those means that we're addressing the severity of the crash as well as the likelihood. Excellent. Now, people sometimes say, oh, removing car parks will lessen the likelihood. I warn and caution people on that. So yes, you open up sight lines, but you also open up a wider road environment for higher speed. So if you're going to remove car parks, utilize that space for some really great separated bike lanes, or building out lovely things to make the area nicer, but keep the roads sort of narrowed down. Otherwise, speeds will go up, and that will increase the likelihood and severity. Shopping strips and areas that are very much, identified as place. I'll give a prize if anybody can tell me where this is. So these areas that are obviously place, Cohen prize there, Bondi Junction. It is Bondi Junction. It actually says it up there if you've got a keen eye. Yes, maybe Cohen saw it there. And anyway, you get a prize for being eagle-eyed and seeing it. I was sort of fascinated with this spot for the time it was there at 40 kilometers an hour, which, it was 50 for a long time, and then it was 40, but even 40 is so fast for an area with this much sort of pedestrian activity. There's the big train station in there, a big shopping center, and a shopping strip. And so having vehicles coming through at 40 was just, and there was death and serious injury throughout there of pedestrians for many, many years, and it continued. And it's a response at one point was to put these bollards and fence it off, and that's just okay. First of all, in this scenario, it actually, I would say, increases likelihood of pedestrian crash. But second of all, it's just such an eroding of place value to corral and stop pedestrians doing that. It really doesn't provide that. So creating those, ideally blocking it off. Now the buses need to sort of get through here as part of what it's done. But why are we letting vehicles through here? Maybe we need just service vehicles to access and drop things off, and buses go through slow. But if you're going to do wide, you could do really wide crossing points and lots of them. But if you sort of have one crossing point down there somewhere, it's really asking a lot to get people to go over it and cross at that location. When we have mixed use arterials, it's a problematic area. We talked about it before. You've got vehicle priority, you've got pedestrian priority, you've got cyclist priority, like in terms of this is your sort of strategic hierarchy of what road users, everything's a priority, and that's a huge challenge. So getting speeds down in these areas, speeds of passenger vehicles, is where we align with safe system principles. If you're trying, if all of that's competing, the safety of vulnerable road users plays out as your most important one there. There are lots of different things that can be done, which I think align well. Like raising up of these sort of mid-block crossing points, to me, is a really neat thing to do. You've defined a crossing point, and that's reasonable to do. I mean, in the sense that you are trying to move traffic through there as well. So, but raising those acts to reduce speed at conflict points, but also to sort of slow down the ability to really go through there fast. It's fast, it's straight, it's flat at the moment, and a driver can move through there pretty quickly. Other things like dwell on red or rest on red, where the lights during Friday night and Saturday night might default to that red position, and only go to green just as cars have pulled up and gone over the loop, and then they flush a few out but drop back to red. It starts to identify the increased risk for pedestrians and intoxicated pedestrians and all sorts of activity there. And really in those hours, we're not trying to push vehicles through there, and we actually discourage sort of that, using it as that run. I mean, it's hard. Separation of modes, providing separated bike facilities is good. If you raise this, people sometimes worry, with the buses, and you can sort of separate out and have that not raised, but raise parts of it. There's lots of ways to play around with it. Pedestrian refuges can be good. Again, if you're starting to fence off big areas, it erodes that place perspective. A few more. These are going to really be hard environments for us because the investment in infrastructure, there's so many roads out there, low volume rural roads. They have high speeds, and the volume of vehicles means that doing heavy investment in infrastructure is not economically justified. So there's a lot of existing treatments that reduce the likelihood of crashes, sealed shoulders, which is still expensive, but audio tactile center line, edge line, enhanced line marking, guidepost treatments, isolated bits of barrier, intersection warning signs, and then into barrier systems. But barrier systems for long lengths, hugely expensive. And so for your lower volume roads, the justification on that's hard. At a theoretical perspective, these sorts of roads should have their speeds brought down, speed limits brought down with some enforcement, point-to-point enforcement or in-vehicle enforcement and the like. And then your higher order roads should have the infrastructure investment so that vehicles can go fast in a highly aligned safe system manner. That's the theoretical way of thinking about it. The challenge is in the strategic rollout of lower speed limits on low volume rural roads and working with the community. But at a theoretical level, that's sort of what we can do, which would start to address severity of crashes and reduce likelihood of crashes. But our high volume rural roads, this one doesn't look high volume, but it is. That's where we're going to be, talking about central barrier systems, outer barrier systems, and maintain the higher speed. It's got important strategic function, and that addresses the severity of the crashes. And when you do that, and you have your central barrier system, an opportunity arises with an intersection like this, where if you can put your roundabout in, maybe a compact roundabout or the like, you can have access points that feed off, going up much further in there. And then the roundabout creates that U-turn opportunity, because they can't come out and turn right because the barrier down the middle of the road, but you can accelerate them down here. They turn around and they go back that way. Your distances that you're able to do that, maybe a couple of kilometers is starting to stretch the friendship. But trying to minimize gaps in the barriers for that is a good thing to do. Plus, of course, you get some just really wonderful safe system aligned intersection treatments going on there. So a nice activity to do if you're dealing with lengths of network is to do sort of long-term strategic safe system planning of the route from an infrastructure perspective, and sort of lay out the route, and it's got all these different, intersections and the like, and you sort of think about it from that whole perspective of, okay, well, maybe in the future we'll have a roundabout at this one, a roundabout at this one, and a roundabout at this one, and then we'll make this one left in, left out, and then you can start to say, well, that's sort of a future scenario, and then let's step it back with a scope ladder and say, well, what's the best thing to do to start with? And it may be that you go, well, actually, the best thing for us to do to start with is a roundabout here and central barrier system there, and that's project one. But it aligns well with your thinking of future future scenarios. Couple more. High volume outer suburban arterial roads, these sort of major traffic routes, they're not nice places to be, but they provide a function in the bulk of cities around Australia and New Zealand. But the answer, if you want your speeds of vehicles above that, really 40 or 50 kilometre per hour, is you can't mix or even have vulnerable road users on that safe pavement. So these sort of 70, 80 kilometre arterials with bike lanes are not well aligned with safe system principles. Completely separated off-road paths to eliminate that exposure, raising any crossing points there. You still want to think about raising the signals, but this is where we would be starting to push for pedestrian overpasses, underpasses, pedestrian fencing becomes more of a viable option in these sorts of scenarios. It's a traffic route, and you want to make it more and more like a motorway, really, is what you've decided, if that's where you're going to go. And motorways in their own right, they do align well with safe system principles for the fact that, we've eliminated a lot of the crash types, head-on crashes, run-off road crashes, there's continuous barrier systems, intersection crashes have been eliminated. Yes, you have on-ramps and things like that, which is a lower severity possibility. And these perform very well per vehicle. They're our best performing road per vehicle through, or even per person through, apart from like a mole or something like that. The point in time where they struggle is during flow breakdown, where vehicles have speed and there's higher likelihood of crashes because we're getting braking, weaving, all of that sort of happening. So the use of managed motorways is a good one. So lane use management systems, freeway ramp metering, and you can close down lanes using this, proactively reduce the speed as congestion build, or you're about to get into flow breakdown based on traffic theory with headways and the like. And yeah, it becomes a really good environment. Monitoring for vulnerable road users using a lot of the video detection systems is a good one. So when you do have the taxi pulls over for the person to get out and whatever they're doing, throwing up or whatever it is, which happens on motorways, and then we see fatalities associated with that, being able to detect that and reduce speed and close off lanes proactively is a really great feature. And finally, major rural highways, they, from the start, as they get duplicated, will have continuous barrier systems from now on. Anybody who does a safe system on that is guaranteed to be suggesting continuous full barrier systems on these large duplication jobs and retrofitting existing barrier systems in continuous barrier, because we know people are going to fall asleep, they're going to leave their lane, and we need to, provide that protection through barrier systems essentially. This is to a degree wasted space, unless they plan to, I don't know, widen into that in the future, which they don't. This is the Hume up out. But yeah, that's what we're sort of seeing. And then for the intersections, grade separated intersections, of course. But if you do have at-grade intersections, they can operate in a fairly well-aligned safe system manner through, say you have an intersection like that, got a big median there and it's open at 110 kilometers an hour, it just doesn't score well in a safe system assessment. But if you block that off and then have good acceleration lane and then a good bit of space length for them to merge over, and then a U-turn and an acceleration lane back in the median, merge from the right's not the best, but if you've got speeds up and same and particular volumes, and then they can turn. So what you've done is you've created delta V's, change in velocities within tolerable limits at these locations. And, so it's possible to do it from that perspective. Grade separation is better, or potentially sort of, site activated speed and warning and the like, to reduce the likelihood of crashes. Okay, I raced through a little bit there. I think we've done quite a bit of that sort of discussion and thinking as a group already anyway, so I don't need to, I don't really need to labour the point. I want to give you some time back to really finish off the course, and I'll take any final questions or comments. I had a little bit of extra content, which I don't think I'll do. I think this group's got their head around most of the things I'm saying based on the quizzes and quiz results and the module 2 assignments and things like that. So I'll hand it over to you, Loretta, to dive them into the learning management system and walk them through finishing. And I'll just monitor the chat to see if anybody wants to ask any final questions.
Sounds good. Thank you. I'll just share my screen.
Yep, we can see that.
Thank you. All right, so as you know, we're on module 5 and clicking on there in the LMS, there's not too much for you to do here. So there is a quiz. So finishing off the course with a quiz, of course, as you've done in previous modules, clicking on the quiz and attempting that. And then from there, oh, jump too far, sorry, module 5. There is also a really good reference or a comparison report here. So it's really beneficial for you to click on this one, and it gives you a comparison of, audits, assessment, and the OSRAP and all the attributes, to compare those techniques. So it's really good reference tool.
I'm glad you brought that up, Laura. Thank you for doing that, because that's just a common question that I'd get asked, and others would be asked is, oh, well, what's the difference between this OSRAP thing and a safe system assessment, or a road safety audit and an OSRAP or IRAP, and so just tried to lay out some of the key differences. You can see there's a lot of similarities, but yeah, good. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's really all you need to do in module 5. So really sort of, finishing off that quiz. If you haven't completed your module 2 or module 4 assessments, you've still got a bit of time, so that's okay. But one last thing I did want to mention is once you've gone through all of the modules and completed the requirements, please ensure you click on the feedback. So all feedback is good feedback, but you must click on the feedback and fill that out in order to have access to your certificate once you've completed all the assessments. So please ensure you do that. You might get, a few emails from me sort of, checking in and reminding you if you haven't submitted your assessments. And, if you do, we know things happen in life. If you do need a little bit of extra time, totally fine. We're happy to, give you those extensions as well. So that's all from me and the LMS. And again, if you do need extra help in, for instance, your site assessment, we can offer, a one-on-one sort of coaching session as well. So just reach out if you do need any assistance. Thanks, Ken.
Awesome. Thank you, Loretta. So yeah, finish off all of those assignments and quizzes, get them in, put that feedback, and then your certificate will appear. We'll also send you a hard copy of your certificate and any prizes you've collected along the way. And that'll come in the post in a while after everything's sort of settled. Remember, if you don't manage to pass or get that 80% required on your first attempt, you've got more attempts. So don't get too stressed about that. You can have another go at it. Couple of final comments from me. So I do see questions come in around continuous barrier systems and the impact of those associated with breakdown and the like. So there's been quite a bit of work and thinking at an Austrades level and jurisdictional level on that. Providing ideal offsets of barrier systems to cater for that. It's a very sort of, there's a lot of detail in that. I suggest you have a look at the updated Guide to Road Design Part 6 and have a look at continuous barrier considerations and offsets and creating breakdown bays if you can't get offsets and the like, because there's quite a bit in that. But it's something that's been acknowledged as a challenge. You get far greater road safety benefit from putting the continuous barrier systems in, but there is a small increase in risk that you need to try to deal with from that perspective. Okay, so it got to the end of the course. Well done, congratulations. Finish everything off. And if you come across questions, not just about the safe system assessment you're doing now, but just generally, feel free to shoot through an email. We're always happy to share information, provide people with assistance, point people to different things. So do keep in contact. If you're on LinkedIn, feel free to connect with me and follow Safe System Solutions, because we put out a lot of information to try to keep industry up to speed on road safety engineering treatments and their effectiveness and methodologies to assess risk and the like. So it's worth following Safe System Solutions there. Feel free to also, once you get your certificate, if you want to post that online, you're welcome to do so. Tag in Safe System Solutions and myself, and we'll make sure we share that and like it as well. I want to thank Loretta for all her work behind the scenes. It's amazing how much has to happen to get these up and running and make sure everybody has all the right information and links and gets their little welcome packs and answers all those questions behind the scenes. So thank you for all your hard work and dedication there. And I also want to thank everybody for taking time out of their hectic, busy schedules to come and do this. It's to me, it's always important that we go and try to look for ways to protect our community and keep people safe, and learning new methodologies, looking at things through different lenses is so important. And it's a credit to you all to actually take the time to do that. We're also time poor at the moment, that you've made that commitment. And it really is now something I want you to be champions for this safe system assessment process. I want you to be out there doing these for your clients or getting them done on projects, and making sure people are aware of it, and not just apathetically building things we know have inherent risk. We need to really be challenging that. You've got a tool to do it. So let's keep pushing at this, and we'll see some really wonderful outcomes. So thank you very much. Keep in contact. Of course, we're here to support you to get you through and finished. So keep in contact, and we look forward to seeing you at another Safe System Solutions training at some point in the future.
Thanks again, everyone. Thanks, Ken. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.